Hello guys, we are going to present the sixth chapter of The Cooling of the American Mind by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Heath. I'm Hilary Bedoya, and I am going to explain the concept of political polarization. The political polarization may reference to a specific point, and it is that citizens are divided into blocks, such as, for example, Paris, right or left, um, religious or non-religious people, white people, black people, and others. And the principal aspect through it could be possible are simple messages that appeal to the emotions of the citizens and are reproduced by social media. And this political polarization has created an hostile and vulnerable social environment, and this hostile environment is more common than we think at universities, where professors have been involved into a violent atmosphere due to what they said or not. And I want to ask you, what do you think? Some people have found that appealing to emotions is much more effective than appealing to reasons. I think that is so important to keep this in mind and reflect about it through the video, guys. To address this political and social situation, Alison Stanger, who is a professor, said to the New York Times that political life and discourse in the United States is a boiling point, and I am going to present a video that talk about a little bit about this, to talk about this concept.
I'm going to lose some followers from this one. My goal is to talk about politics in an easy to digest way that doesn't sugarcoat things, even when I know it's going to offend people. With that in mind, we're going to talk about political polarization. As you can see, this is an issue that has drastically increased over time. And that trend is only continuing. Speaking from my personal experience and the thousands of debates that I have, when I talk to the left and I disagree and I don't meet every single box that they want me to check, they immediately classify me as the right and I'm the enemy. And when you disagree with someone on the right, they tend to think of it as a personal attack and will start lashing out at you directly, and no real conversation happens. It's this deep ingrained need to find out whose team you're on. If you're not with me, you're against me. In this video, I talked about how I refuse to conform to any specific ideology, and I still get comments of people trying to figure out where I belong, whose team I'm on. And all of this is very much by design because it benefits the people in power. They work directly with the media to keep people as far apart as they can. In my last video, we talked about the Fair Tax Act and how it was never intended to be passed. It's literally just being put forth so that they can say, the other side said no, be mad at them. Both sides are guilty of this behavior. The idea is, if the people are fighting amongst themselves, they will never fight the people in power. And when people like me talk about massive government reform, people get really upset if the suggested solutions don't perfectly match some form of government throughout history. We live in a world that history has never faced before. Never has society been as modernized as it is today. To think that we're going to be able to make a government that fits this society based off of things that happened hundreds of years ago is naive. Yes, the best solution might pull from some of those forms of governments in history, but the reality is it's going to be something else entirely. But we can't even have that conversation because no one wants to listen to you unless you completely agree with them, which is exactly what those in power want. They benefit from the system staying exactly the same. So they'll continue to attempt to fix things and then get mad at the other side so that you can keep arguing with everyone but them.
Well, she touches on some points that we will soon explain.
My goal is
now the next part. What brought polarization in society to a boiling point? I am give you the reasons that the authors gave us. The first is that during the mid-20th century, USA faced a series of common challenges, such as Great Depression and also common enemies into the World War II, and also with the Soviets during the Cold War. So the loss of a common enemy after the collapse of the Soviet Union can be expected to lead to more intertribal conflict in the country, say the authors. The second reason is the increasingly self-segregating into political homogeneous communities. That means that people in these communities may share the same racial ethnicity, the same languages, and a common or very similar sets of beliefs or way of thinking. And a similar situation happens with the parties. I mean, as the Republican Party becomes older, white, rural, male, and Christian, the Democratic Party becomes young, urban, female, and non-white and non-religious. The third reason is the media environment, because nowadays there are a group for each topic of interest that people might have, and the social media are prepared to give you or show you the things that will like you or are in the line of your way of thinking. And the fourth reason is the hostility in the Congress, because the parties view their enemies view their opposites such as enemies, and it's the hate that made people participate, that make people move, and think that people that are opposite to they or to their beliefs or to their line of thinking must be stopped at all costs. And this political polarization is related with racial and political provocation suffered by students and also professors on the campuses. These attacks are most often carried out by people um, outside the campuses, but direct by people there, by people there, and usually are made bad are made up by people in the right party against people on the left party. And feelings and emotion also play a decisive role in these attacks or situations, and in the decisions that are taken about them. My partner is going to talk about affective polarization, and she will give some examples that about what I explained.
So, hello guys. I am now going to be talking about affective polarization. For you to get closer to this topic, I would like you to please read this quote with me from the book. So, it says, if the people on the other side are moving farther and farther away from you on a broad set of moral and political issues, it stands to reason that you will feel more and more negatively toward them. Basically, what the author says is that the more different your ideas, ideologies, beliefs, desires are from the others, the more rejection you would feel toward the other party in this case. So it's pretty important for you to know that people will not support their own party genuinely. They will support it because it is the opposite from the other party's ideas. So, as once the teacher mentioned in one of our classes, each party has a common enemy. So they don't really act for the sake of helping each other to benefit everyone. They act by proving that the other party is wrong. So people are motivated to take part in political action not by love of their party's candidate, but by hate of the other party's candidate. So, as the author says, politics is driven less by hope and more by the untruth of us versus them. So, mainly, this chapter is based on the untruth of us versus them. They must be stopped at all costs. So, for us to make it easier for you to understand, we have some examples here. We have the example of political campaigns against the other candidate. Here we have Edward Rodriguez, which is one of the political leaders of the Democratic Center. And he mostly defends the government of Ivan Duque before. And here in his poster, we are able to see that he questions the role of Gustavo Petro in Colombian politics. So we see here a way to, let's say, make this polarization grow in a way that they are not really supporting their own party, but they are attacking the other. And the other example would be when people were supporting Rodolfo just not to support Pedro. They were not really, um, they didn't really agree with Rodolfo's ideas. They just didn't want to support Pedro. So this would be some of the examples that are close to us for us to comprehend affective polarization. I forgot to ask you, what other examples of affective polarization come to your mind? So, guys, I am now going to be talking about polarization and how it affects professors. So, it seems that affective polarization is symmetrical, that this side and this side behave in the same way, they treat each other or they attack each other in the same way. But is it really true? According to the authors, it is not really like that because there are some people in groups on the right that engage in moralistic, aggressive, and intimidating actions. So, those moralistic, aggressive, and intimidating actions are going to be against professors. So I'm going to show you how this cycle of attacking professors looks like. Basically, it starts with a professor that just says something or writes something that is provocative in public. Why is it provocative? Because the teacher is going to refer to injustices committed by right wing groups. So they are going to disagree with what the teacher or professor said. This information is going to be shared on social media, and right wing media is going to be in charge of distortioning or, well, modifying the facts to amplify the outrage. So, the way people from the right side are going to show their anger is by writing posts or comments on social media. They could also write emails directly to the professors to make racist or sexist insults and include threats of rape or death. So we are not just going to talk about here anger or disagreement. We are talking mainly about aggression and harassment. So this is critical because also usually universities are not going to support the professors. So this is when there is a high risk of being fired or not having their contracts renewed. Here we are able to see both sides and how they behave, so they are not symmetrical. Uh, Here we see that the right focuses on what the professor said or wrote, but the left focuses on the racist and sexist reaction to it. I wanted to ask you this important question, and it's, how would you deal with polarization when you become a teacher? Many professors now are limited to teach or speak out loud or with freedom just because they are afraid of having a misunderstanding that leads to just losing their jobs. So I had some examples here, but it is not possible for me to explain you or talk about these examples, but I would like you to just take a look of these examples and maybe you could be able to search about them, and that would be it. Thank you so much